everybody. Thank you for joining me as we take a trip back to the video store. My name is Brett Glasser, and today in the store, we have with us Renoly Santiago. Renoly's immensely talented. The guy can act, he can sing, he can dance, and he's someone who has a huge footprint in the world of 90s film. Someone who starred in a string of films that, in my opinion, were absolutely iconic for that place and time. Renoly made his big screen debut in 1995's Dangerous Minds, where he starred opposite Michelle Pfeiffer. Renoly then went on to play the role of Phantom Freak, the king of 9X himself, in the cult classic Hackers. Hackers will always have a special place in my heart. Came out when I was 13, probably the most quotable movie on my repertoire. And you then also saw Renoly in films like Daylight and the testosterone-fueled Con Air. So it goes without saying that he was right in the middle of some of the biggest smashes of the 90s, and I'm so glad Renoly was able to call into the video store today. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Renoly Santiago. All right, thank you so much for being here, Renoly. You're someone I've wanted to chat with for a real long time now, and I just really appreciate you calling into the store today. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So looking back at your career, it seemed like 1993 and 1994 were really pivotal years for you because they were kind of leading up to your big hit with Dangerous Minds and then all the movies that followed. So just briefly, what was kind of going on at that time?
I was performing a lot with a theater group here in New York that was called the City Kids Rep. And that was a really cool time that I had a lot of friends that were performers, and we were doing lots of theater. And it was a great kind of like performance lab because you could create material and songs. And so that was like something really cool that I was involved with. And I was also doing theater here in New York, some off-Broadway plays and some musicals, and was just, trying to somehow see what could come out of, getting involved in this career.
Now, you were an East Coaster your whole life?
Yeah.
Now, we're based out of Albany, New York. Have you ever spent any time up here?
Actually, I went up there once, I want to say it was about 3 or 4 years ago to help judge a talent contest.
Oh, really?
So that was a neat experience, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's excellent. Yeah, obviously we get down to the city more often than folks come up to Albany, but, we like being New York's cousin to the north, So basically, things then kind of really launched in 95 with Dangerous Minds and playing Raul, and I mean, really talk about jumping in head first. It had to be crazy when you got that script and, it's kind of your first big picture and you see that you have this one-on-one scene with Michelle Pfeiffer, who's, one of the hottest actresses at that time. I mean, how did you kind of handle that pressure?
Well, at the time, since I had been doing so much performing already, before getting anything big or whatever, that really has a lot to do with being prepared to play a role in a movie with any known actor or, kind of project. So usually before you get an opportunity like that, you've had to go through pounding the pavement in New York, getting yourself developed as a performer in whatever way possible. I didn't really have a lot of money to go and train in schools and stuff like that, but since I was a singer, that really helped open doors for me to get into musicals and plays and watch and learn. And so a lot of that preparation happens before. So if you do end up getting a movie, you can handle, that's why you see, when movies usually are done at that scale, the casts are usually, professional actors and stuff like that. So there had been a lot of preparation. And also you got to keep in mind that, these roles have to be earned. You have to go in there and audition for the part several times in front of, the casting director for that film was a very well-known casting director at the time, Bonnie Timmerman, who was known for discovering Brad Pitt and having done the Miami Vice television shows and all these things. Yeah, so there's already, that mounted pressure is already something that you have to cross and prove yourself on camera and in front of a director and the producers before you actually get to do the movie. So at that point, there isn't really like any, insecurity per se. Like, you've earned the part, you've done all the hours of practice and rehearsal to earn the role, and you really have to get in there and fight for the part. So I was more in performance mode throughout the whole film. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Now,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a more specific question. One of the scenes that always stood out is your fight with Emilio. Did you happen to take that slam against the wall, or was that your stunt double?
No, actually, that one slam was the stunt double. It's funny you mentioned that. I was discussing stage combat and film choreography with someone a few days ago, and that actually came up because normally what will happen, a lot of the times the films I've done have required some kind of action or combat, so I have a lot of experience with doing those kinds of things, and there's always a stunt person that does the take for you first, and then you go in and you yourself. The more potentially dangerous stuff they'll do themselves. But it was kind of funny because, like for instance in Dangerous Minds, the stunt guy, he made it so that, and this is just by what they learn and stuff, to make it look like it's harder, and so like when I was fighting, I wanted to be more combative and a little bit more whatever, and they were like, no, act like it's like you're a little bit more, not as good a fighter per se.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yes, but that's all just part of making things get, seem a little harder. But what's good about it, though, is that the actor still gets to paint the picture, though, of what's going on and stuff like that. So you do get to do the take, as yourself, and then they do, little clips of it with the other person.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it was impressive nonetheless. And kind of also to talk about just one last thing that I also noticed, kind of along with your own acting strategies, is that one thing that was really obvious is that, when you were in that film, you were able to emote a lot of different emotions just in your face without speaking. And in a couple scenes alone, I don't know if this is specifically what you were going for, but you could see, this anger like in the frow of the face and really coming through on the face, but then you'd also have these a real deep sadness in the eyes, and it was just one of those things that even someone who isn't really having that kind of thing on his radar could really still see that coming through. Is that something that just kind of came naturally for you, or is that kind of an acting strategy you developed, throughout the film? Because it was, it was really impressive, and it just kind of fit with the character of Raul as well.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, Brett, for saying that and for, observing those things. One of the things, that happens when you're an actor, especially like for me, which I've brought up in making that film because it was my film debut, is that I learned about trust because all of those things were developed for, that I felt about the character and what I felt in the moment. And it took trust in the sense that I did what I did, but I didn't know if any of it was coming across until I saw the film. Because you don't know what's coming across. All you can do as an actor is just know how you feel about it, and then when it's time to do it, you express it. And that's one of the key things of acting is that that's a very tricky thing because you have to trust that what you're feeling and what you are, sort of in the moment with, that it would come across.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was it's absolutely phenomenal, and just still, the performance itself it really still just holds up. And the last question I had about Dangerous Minds is kind of more of a deep dive into the character. Is personally, what do you think happened to the character of Raul once the movie ends?
Well, I think that he probably, just because I actually do know a little bit about the real Raul, I think, and how they stayed friends and stuff. I think that he ends up going to school, trying to make it. He ends up getting married at, probably at a young age, and is probably working at like a auto shop or something. Or, just doing a normal, everyday, down the middle job. The victory with him is that he didn't stay in the gangs and that he didn't die and that he probably has a family and is married, but this is in the struggle like everybody else in America.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. That's a great ending for Raul. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then that transitioned really quickly then now into my, definitely on my top 10 was the film Hackers. And this was huge for me and in different aspects too. Talk about a movie that had quotable lines, like killer soundtrack. The fashion was outstanding. When you started doing that movie, one of the things I read was, did they actually sit you guys down with real hackers and kind of talk to them and get a little idea into their world?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, and funny enough, just to, before we segue completely into Hackers, with Dangerous Minds also, there was 2 weeks of rehearsal that the kids were allowed to do before the film, which is very unheard of. And that we also got to do for Hackers for other reasons too. But for Dangerous Minds, it was because of the classroom scenes where people would be saying different lines throughout the room. So they would be able to have it rehearsed so that they knew the other students and the other actors would be able to do it when it was their turn. So for like 2 weeks, they just got kind of like some of the people assimilated with that process. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes. So, just so you know, like regarding what was planned or whatever, and there was just incredible talent and the kids that they cast and the people just had a great perception on expressing the realness and the things of that world and that time and really everyday life, But now with Hackers, we did have 2 weeks of rehearsal that included us learning how to rollerblade and then also working with computers, learning the basics on how to work with a laptop, and also there were like a few hackers. We got to hang out with people that were hackers, and also a man who was like in the center of like computer technology growth and development. So we got to do those things before.
That must have been great. I mean, talk about. I remember back, when the movie came out, reading the story about how the official website got vandalized by hackers. Was there any concern?
Did it?
Yeah. They went in and they kind of painted on the faces of Johnny Lee Miller and Angelina Jolie and kind of just wrote some things on it. But it was a legit hack of the United Artists website, I believe it was.
Right.
Yeah. Check it out. Yeah, Google it. It's kind of interesting. I'm sure you can find the image up there. But I was wondering if you had heard about that, if it was any concerns that there were some disgruntled hackers out there who didn't like how they were portrayed.
No, actually, this is the first I heard about that particular thing. But no, actually not. Everything really just kind of rolled along. Like there wasn't anything that was sort of controversial that I can remember that happened per se, like while we were filming or anything like that.
Yeah. Now, were you surprised with how this film has just kind of snowballed into, easily a definable cult classic with a very devoted fan base? Did you have any idea that this film would be as special as it is, or, any inkling at all?
Sort of. Like, for instance, like I knew the energy behind it was right and that it felt really good, but I sort of have like this thing that I noticed I've done for a long time, which is I don't look into the future too much. I'm not like normally the kind of person that predicts things like, oh, this is going to be this or this is going to be that. You know what I mean? I'm more Yeah, like I normally just put a lot of love and a lot of good energy into what I'm doing, and then I hope for the best. Like I just like think, wow, that would be great, you know. But I did kind of feel that it would be a hit.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously, and for me alone, it came out when I was 13, and I mean, talk about the perfect age for that movie. So it just, and it just stood with me. And I mean, that movie gets celebrated, a few times a year, and we're all waiting for a Hackers 2. If they came to you with a Hackers 2, are you in?
Oh, absolutely, totally, and yeah, and I'm so touched, and so would each and every one of us in the cast because we did that film with so much love. Like we put our best into it. We did our best we could do with every fiber. We just wanted it to be like great, and so we just did whatever we could to make it, like just do our best. So like a lot of good hope went into it. So to hear that, it's just the best thing.
And I feel like with today's climate, with like national security, and like all the hacking going on with Russia and stuff, I mean, the scripts just write themselves. I mean, I feel like everybody would easily see, the Phantom Freak having some government job now on the straight and narrow, and stumbles upon some conspiracy and needs to enlist the gang again. I mean, there's so many ways you could take Hackers 2 that would be so much fun, and I feel like that would be such a hit for the Hackers fans who are waiting for it.
Oh, thank you. Well, I would love that. And you never know with these things. Hopefully, they are really looking at it. And I know that we would totally be into it. So,
I guess we just have to, if anyone's listening to this, hashtag make Hackers 2.
yeah.
All right. Well, we can just wind this thing down. But just with our whole theme of celebrating the video stores of our day, I would love to know just your idea of your own local video store when you were growing up in New Jersey, and and when you were older. Do you remember what your video store that you used to go to was named, and anything about it?
Yeah, there was one right next door, like where we lived, or at least it was one of the first ones ever to pop up in the neighborhood. And I don't remember the name of it, but it was yeah, like it was a great era where it was one of the first times that you could actually go and be able to, select a film that you wanted to see and be able to, see it. Now it's like a normal thing, but back then that's the way you did it, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I feel like that's why there's this deeper connection with the movies of the 80s and 90s, because if you really think about it, every time we wanted to see them, there was a financial investment and transaction that had to be made. So you were investing into it, not only your money, but your time and your love. And now with with things like Netflix, I feel like they're just so readily available. There's just not that deep connection. It's a little bit more of a flippant type of relationship.
Yeah. And also right after that video store, the Blockbuster chain opened, and I remember seeing one of the first Blockbusters that was opened, and it was like a huge chain for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we had Blockbusters and Hollywood Videos were the other big chain up here. What now? How about what was that transition like? You star in a string of just absolute hits, and now when you show up to the video store, do you what was that transaction like, or the transition as far as now you're plastered up all over the place with posters, and how was that handling that?
That was like really, really nice. Like, I always try to not like go too much into indulging in that myself personally, because I always felt that was a little bit. I just didn't feel comfortable doing that too much, like, because I really don't try to build myself up all over the work. I try to definitely go respect myself as an artist, and see myself as a top-notch level artist, and that I have that commitment to what I do. But when I get to see like it on a movie or this or that, I feel definitely such a big blessing. But I don't try to make it like about looking at that and being like, hey, look at me, you know what I mean? But it was definitely like, it's surreal. Like, you're kind of like, wow, that really is me. And it almost doesn't even feel like it's you, because you're just like I'm just a normal person, you can relate, like just living life, and then you see things and you're like, is that real? It's kind of funny.
Hey, thanks so much, Renoly. I really appreciate you calling into the video store today. And everybody, please check out Renoly on Instagram. And he's also on Twitter at The Real Renoly. His Instagram is Renoly Santiago. And also, please check out Renoly.com. Thank you so much, Renoly. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Great talking to you.
You too. Thanks.